Hey everyone, good morning. Um, I am getting started a little bit later, excuse me, than I had originally anticipated. Um, as often is the case, I woke up overnight a little bit, and it took me kind of a long time to fall back asleep. So here I am, um, about 30 minutes late. But you know what? That's just how it rolls down. So there we go. Um, I wanted to actually kind of just do a live this morning, not for editing, not to talk about anything other than to talk a little bit about my journey about uh, right, like what got me. Excuse me, into podcasting. Um, Sorry, turning my phone over there. And like the more that I've thought about this kind of a lot, right? And the more that I've thought about it, the more I realize that this story is not like I've been working as a podcast editor for about 2 years, but this story is way, way older than that in the beginnings of it. Um, because I've always really loved storytelling and helping people kind of share their own stories. And honestly, as I think back on it, it strikes me as a little bit weird that it didn't actually occur to me that what I wanted to be when I grew up was a storyteller. And apparently it didn't actually occur to like anybody else in my life either. Uh, so when I was, oh gosh, I want to say 14, 15, uh, a Scooby-Doo movie came out. And this applies, I promise. And my local newspaper at the time was hiring like young people, so me, to write movie reviews, and they would pay for you to go and see the movie. So they paid for me to go and see this Scooby Doo movie, and then I wrote a review about it, and I loved it. Right, and my review was published in the newspaper. It was really cool, and that was it. Right, so like, uh, nobody said, "Oh, hey, yeah, you really loved doing that thing, didn't you? Uh, did you know that that could be your actual job?" And I grew up in, I guess, a family and I guess a religious culture more than anything else, where for women, the goal was to be a stay at home mom. Uh, and while I think that that whole like social idea is born out of sexism, uh, in my family, at least, it wasn't well, women are only good for staying home and taking care of the kids, and more uh, that it was like a divine calling, and also that children needed their mothers. And so I always kind of just assumed, right, that that was what was going to happen to me. And so I didn't put a ton of thought into like what I wanted to be when I grew up. And like the whole going to college narrative was part of the package deal, but it was more like going to college can help you be a more well-rounded individual so that you can be a better parent. And I think that that's true, right? Like, I think that I'm a better parent because I went to college, but by that same token, right, it didn't exactly matter what you majored in. You just needed to go to college to make that happen. And so I want to move forward through my life, and I'm going to skip over a bunch of that story because, frankly, right this minute, I don't want to tell you about it. And we then arrive at me actually going to college right after writing this movie review. And when when it was time for me to actually start working on my bachelor's degree, I thought, well, what about like being a lawyer? Because some of the experiences in my life that I just skipped over really made me want to practice family law. And of course, like a law degree is an advanced degree. You need a bachelor's degree before you go to law school. And so I thought, well, what about gender studies? And so that's what I did. Right? I have a bachelor's degree in gender studies. But a semester and a half into working on this degree, I learned a little bit more about like actually becoming a lawyer and really like what kind of a life I could expect, right, as a lawyer, and more specifically, this concept of billable hours. And if you don't know, now you're going to learn something new that I learned. So when you hire a lawyer, there's some work that they can bill you for, and then they themselves get paid. And then there's some work that they can't, but is still necessary to take your case to court. And so part of the reason that lawyers have this reputation for working like truly a credible amount of hours is because they can only bill for about half of the work that they actually do for you. So an 80-hour work week pretty easily can turn into 40 hours of pay. And I decided that I wasn't really okay with that dynamic, like at all. My husband Nathan and I had gotten married at this point, and knew that we wanted to have a family, but weren't parents yet. And so I also, right, like in addition to just like knowing even without being a parent that type of life was not sustainable, I also knew that, like I might want to actually like hang out with my kids sometimes after I had them. But I still finished the degree because, I mean, at that point, I'd already been in college I'd been in college for 4 years before I transferred to a university to finish my bachelor's degree. Like, I was tired of being in college. So I finished my degree, became a parent, got and then during kind of like I'm still early in my parenting journey, right? Like as of right now, my kids are 8, 6, and then my youngest is gonna be 4 in like 10 days. So, his birthday's coming right up. But kind of like early in that time, and again, like this detail might seem like it's not super important right now, but it will be in a few minutes. My friend Cheyenne and I were really talking about a lot about like budgeting and our own like money journeys and financial literacy. And like I was learning more about like kind of how pay inequality affected working women. Because I was, of course, was working full time at this time, as I have been for really my entire adult life. So learning about pay inequality and how the lack of access to paid parental leave can affect especially women. And uh, then I started hearing a lot about uh, women like a lot older than myself, but whose spouses had passed away, and um, their husbands handled all the finances. So not only were they grieving, but they were like dealing with money for the first time, right? We're talking about all of this, and I'm trying to figure out still, like, what do I want to be when I grow up? I wasn't happy in my job, but I needed it because, blah, blah, blah. Oh, excuse me. Right? Like the boat that a lot of us are in. Um, right? And when it came to childcare, we were getting help from my parents-in-law. But it's not exactly like they were having an easy time of things either. And I eventually thought, well, it seems pretty clear that I'm going to need some kind of an advanced degree if I want to move into something that isn't terrible for me or for my family. And so I started working on a master's degree in public and nonprofit administration, and I earned that in 2020. But while I was working on my degree, I was also, gratefully for me, advancing in my career in public higher education. Right, so I've been working in higher education this entire time. Right, finished the degree. Now, while I was working on my degree, Cheyenne and I were kind of taking all of this money stuff that we'd been talking about and saying, what if we, like, could we start a podcast with this? Like, we're a little bit frustrated, having been adulting for a while, about, like, what personal finance advice looks like, right? Like, people are saying, oh, this is the only way to finance, or this is the only way to finance, when, like, really a lot of how we handle our money is really deeply tied to, like, our social experiences and our family makeup and all this other stuff. So Cheyenne has her own stories and, like, stuff that she had going on during this time. But for me, I finished my master's degree. Right? Hooray! But as you may have heard a second ago, I finished my master's degree in 2020. So not only was it not a great time to be, like, looking for a new job, excuse me, like, I was just trying to keep my head above water with school, with my eldest being in kindergarten, right? School going from in-person to remote, and no more daycare. Trying to, like, kind of juggle all the things, basically. And eventually Cheyenne and I went, well, you know what? We keep talking about this. Let's start the podcast. So in 2020, Cheyenne and I started What the Finance. And we're getting ready to launch our third season next week. So I'm really excited about that. But we're getting our feet under us and we're having a good time, kind of. Initially, Cheyenne was doing all of the audio editing for the show, and she hated every second of it. And so after a conversation, we've been going for a couple of months, I said, well, I'll give it a try, right? Like, I didn't think of myself as especially techie, but I figured out other things before, and I could figure this out. And not only did I figure it out, but I discovered that I really, really liked it, like, a lot. And so I built my skills with What the Finance for a few months, and I thought, well, is this just ego? Like, or do I, right, like, do I just enjoy hearing myself talk, or is this work that I actually enjoy doing? And so I went to my friend Justin, who I knew had been thinking about starting a podcast, to say, hey, are you looking for an editor? This is the situation that I'm in. Like, I'd be interested in building my skills if you'd be interested in having me as an editor. And Justin basically went, yeah, that'd be awesome. So then I started working on Grace Matter podcast. And that's where you see me mostly, right? Like when I'm editing live, I'm doing Grace Matter podcast. And it's a great show. It's a lot of work, but it's really good. Like the conversations that they have in each episode are just a delight. And I did that for a couple of months, and I went, no, this isn't ego. I actually just really like doing this. And so I've been really slowly, sometimes painfully slowly, working to build up a consistent client list of people who shows I work on. And I've worked on the first show that I worked on after I realized, like, no, I actually really would like for this to be my job, was Life After the Uniform, which unfortunately succumbed to pod fade. But and I guess if you don't know, pod fade means just the show very slowly stopped getting made. Oh, excuse me, I hit my desk. But I really enjoyed working on that show. And I helped to launch another show actually about a month ago called Mindset of a Mom, Minority, and MD, that I think is really, truly is just excellent. There's one episode out because it's a monthly show. And I'm in the process of actually helping to launch another show as well that, like, I'm just excited about it, right? Like, it's fun work. It's really good. But what really has brought me, has kept me going is my love of the work, but also learning more about how important editing is to good storytelling. Which kind of brings us back to the beginning, right? Like, telling a good story. So yeah, I guess that really is kind of what's brought me into podcast editing. But I'm also in this place, right, where like I'm ready for the next move, right? Like I'm ready and I'm excited to do something new, maybe a little bit outside of public higher education. And I really hope that this is it. Because, and I feel like a broken record, but because I love the work, but also, right, I have little kids. And the pandemic has been hard. It's been hard for a lot of families with young kids. And I know it's been hard for everybody, right? Like, this is not like a misery contest or like who has it harder. That's not what this is. So if you're not gonna come at me with like, oh well, it was hard for me too. Yeah, I know. I know that it was. But I'm talking about my own experience right now. The families of young kids, this was really difficult. And so another part of the reason that this is important to me is to really build that life that actually allows me to be the type of parent that I've always wanted to be, right? So I'm not, I always feel a little bit weird about this, to be honest with you. Because this isn't about laziness, and this isn't about wanting to not work hard. What this is about is to help myself and hopefully eventually others to build that professional life that allows them to be present as a professional and also be present in the lives of their families. So, yeah, I guess 20 minutes in, that is kind of my piece of what I wanted to talk about this morning. And so I just want to say thank you to the two of you who joined me this morning. If you want to, I'm actually just going to put a few things over here in the chat so that you've got them, or if you're watching this later, then you've got them. But you can visit my website, racheledits.co. So there's that. Or if you're just like, wow, this lady is doing really good work, but maybe you don't actually need to hire a podcast editor. You just want to support like a content creator. Venmo is a really good way to go about doing that. Let's see. So yeah, if you want to hit me up there, you certainly can. And so I think I'll just end this very rambling 20-minute video by, again, thanking you for joining me, either now or in the future. I do encourage you to just support your local content creators, because we're out here, and I think we're not saving lives, but I think we're doing good work. And I hope that you see the value in that. All right, until next time, I hope you have a great day. Bye.